right, so normally at this point, I get to ask a lot of questions. I'm up here already, but I'm not going to do that because I want to make sure that you guys that are out there, live and in person or joining us virtually, get a chance to ask questions. And you don't have them, I do, so I hold mine. That said, who has a question for any of our panelists or maybe for all? So Kirby and then Trent.
Yeah, so for Ed and Allison both, with this huge portfolio of existing buildings, have you looked at or thought about doing long-term certification as you make improvements? That's a big.
That's a great question. So I would defer to the head of facilities design and operations on that. We do have a significant amount of LEED certified professionals, and they do have strategies set for future efforts. I'm not sure if that is one of them. I would hope so, but I do know that we're considering and actively do building performance analysis, looking at LEED versus non-LEED and different versions of LEED. O&M, I think, could be something on the horizon. Just can't say for certain.
I don't know. Yes, that is definitely something that we have thought about. That's a short, pithy answer. Referencing back to what I mentioned earlier, is that yes, that is definitely that is the end. That is the end, right? To take our existing building stock, make it as good or better than a new building, but for cheaper going O&M, right? Unfortunately, tax receipts are a reality in my line of work. It's in municipal government, so we can't always get what we want, to reference the Rolling Stones. Really, what I'm doing right at the moment in 2019 is what in O&M can we do right now? Getting the preventative maintenance plan together, standardizing on the things that we're going to replace, the MRO, ROI, not to throw too many acronyms out, all that other fun stuff. The building that I work is at end of life of lamps, and so we're probably moving from T8 to LED. That will reduce the energy requirement, meet the 90.1, exceed that. That will be one step toward O&M whenever we get there. So doing the baseline work without having that be the end goal this year.
And Trent. And then I have a question from Beyond.
This is a question, I guess, for any LEED accredited professional that would want to answer, if you can. I think there's a lot of misperceptions about the cost of going LEED and the short-term versus the long-term benefits. Have you seen any good research lately about, or have you experienced in your own portfolios, how much more it costs to go LEED? I think we have a lot of kind of anecdotal gut feelings, but how does that play out over the long term? And it's okay if you don't, because I've looked for this stuff and I haven't found it, so.
I mean, the reading materials suggest it's 25% more roughly, but return on the investment is realized very quickly with, for example, with commercial real estate, higher rents, lower turnover, happier employees, and that sort of thing. So productivity is up. But I don't know if that's actually a fact or if it's just something that's built into the study guides and reading material. Rachel, have you heard anything to that? Anybody else?
And I would agree. I mean, I think, like you researched it, and the study material and the guides that are published reference, like what Kirby said.
I do know that the earlier you start to incorporate LEED in your project, the cheaper it is. It really gets really expensive when you try to tack it on at the end. But yeah, I've been trying to, people always ask me, well, how much more is it going to cost? And it's hard to quantify the benefits of employee health and well-being, employee turnover, increased rent when you don't know, So I just wondered if anyone had any new information I didn't have.
Well, the smart strategy is to use synergies where you can get double points for a couple of different things. And that can actually increase your score and can reduce your out-of-pocket too, because you're accomplishing a couple of things with the same dollar.
And
Do you have a more of a response or?
I just want to clarify something. He said earlier about OSHA. I run factories. Safety doesn't cost, it pays. Okay? Safety doesn't cost, it pays. You mentioned efficiency in buildings. If you're saving on a daily basis when you're operating your building, you're saving money, and it consistently pays itself off. Kirby just mentioned the 25%, and that was from my lead trainer as well. It's about 25% more, but it pays back in years, not decades. So it's a reasonable ROI to take to a CFO. So when somebody says, does sustainability pay for itself? The answer is yes. And the quicker we get on the bandwagon of being sustainable, it will multiply itself and we'll have a synergistic effect. The Navy will be happier people instead of pissed off that we got to go into that building that pollutes our lungs.
So I have a question from someone joining us virtually, and they are curious, and Rachel maybe or Roger can address this. So we've talked about rebates and incentives for business and municipalities. Are there any rebates related to new residential properties from an energy standpoint?
Yes, in a word. We have a program which is called residential new construction. And that is actually at this point, it's targeted the builders because ultimately that's the best place to get. They're not huge. They can be anywhere from $400 to $1,000. But the purpose of that is to have them design a more energy efficient home. And there's many things that follow from that. First of all, it's a much more saleable home. The buyer that tends to buy an energy efficient home also realizes that resale time, they're going to get more money for that. So they're going to save up, they're going to save on their operating costs while they're in there. They're going to see that resale value be higher than a house that might be comparable in looks, but not in construction. So definitely for residential construction, there's also a number of other measures just aimed at homeowners. You can, I'll plug in Electric Ideas with an S, electricideas.com. Every one of our incentives and rebate programs is resident there. So if you're upgrading your central air conditioning, if you're putting in ductless heat pumps, an Energy Star rated dehumidifier, taking advantage of ECM motors. There's many things that are just incremental improvements that we can really help you with on rebates. And saving energy and becoming more sustainable is not one giant move. It's step by step by step. And in some, you get to a point where you say, well, we never could have gotten that other way. So that's much fewer on that, I guess.
No. All right, Chief, this one for you. It's an evolving question. It started with budgets, but it sounds like that's been answered. Looks like, so Chief, could you comment on how the greater building helps the firefighters? So when they're returning from a fire scene with equipment, insurance, et cetera, that's contaminated, is there any benefit on that?
So I'm not 100% certain that the lead process helps as much with that. So we have contaminated gear that we do bring back to the station. We have gear washers that our firefighters take contaminated gear and they wash it after any fire that they encounter contaminants. They shower, they do gross decontamination at the scene typically and those kind of things. So the building itself doesn't really, I guess, impact that. It's more what they're doing, the operations of what they're doing at the scene, and then the cleanup after they handle that. With the lead process, what I was talking about more so as far as their healthier living, if I could just piggyback onto what you just said about being happier people in a building, I'm talking about more things like adding additional natural lighting in the building, so that way you have that in your workspace. Over here at Fire Station number 9, we incorporated in the behind the building, and it's not built yet, but in part of the landscape plan, we actually had raised planting beds. Most people don't realize this, but firefighters like to like to grow vegetables in the summertime. So we actually have raised beds planned behind the fire station, so that way they can grow their own vegetables and have healthy food to eat during the summertime if they can. Those are the kind of things that are added into it that we actually got, or we anticipate getting credits for with the LEED process that ultimately help them be happier employees or happier people within the building or the structure that they're living in day to day.
Thank you. Doesn't you here? Questions for anything? Okay, because I have questions. So I will ask them. Let's see. So many questions. So many people. Okay, Allison, I was curious. You talked a lot about savings, cost savings, energy savings. Are you guys doing any tracking and maybe speaking to LEED certification too? So those intangibles. So is this attracting more donations to the university? Is this recruiting new students that are excited to see this happening, so they're coming here versus wherever else? Or public positive feedback that's coming, any kind of intangibles outside of like the hard currency sort of thing?
Sure, absolutely. I think yes, it certainly is. There are a lot of intangibles associated with it. One of the things we're working on right now is a lot of signage, sustainability related signage, advertising the tangible impacts, but also the intangible impacts. So I mentioned that 79,000 square foot green roof. That surrounds a new gym for our students. And so unless you're up on like the 5th floor, you really can't see it. We're working on signage that's explaining some of the features of our buildings, as well as some other sustainability features around campus that I'm hoping will be installed by the first football game when we have a lot of visitors. But it is something that we do get a lot of questions about from students. Folks are always looking for information. So we'd like to point them to our website or our utilities website where we have the building portfolio listed, and they can actually learn about some of the features of the various LEED certified buildings that we've gotten certified for the past 9 or so years.
Just trying to work in that education piece.
That's the big integrating it into our education.
Question.
Didn't you put in a micro dam water project for electricity? That's still.
Yeah, so there is an effort underway on the Notre River hydroelectric project. Hydro, yes. Yes, and that we're hoping mid-2020 or somewhere in that ballpark. There's still a few things that are being worked out.
Like getting permission from the state?
I think it's just waiting on final agreements to be signed, but working with our key partners on that initiative in the city, working through permitting issues. When it is commissioned, it'll be about 7% of our energy portfolio on campus. But we wanted to make sure that we thought through working closely with PNR, the city, I believe INM was involved in that, to make sure that we are being good stewards of this space as well.
That would be hard to miss if you're downtown at all. So, I have a question for Tyler or Tim. So you shared some of these larger sort of industrial size projects. Are you working on solar projects for people that are pursuing LEED certification? And if so, how do those differ from, hey, we want to put solar carports in which look cool and are function well, but are you involved in LEED certifying projects and shuttle programs?
I can answer this part of that. So the most recently certified, yes, you are. Simple answer. Most recently, the toll road added a new, I think, headquarters. Ashford. Yeah, so they were LEED certified building, and they incorporated solar to boost the points to reach that commercial level. It's silver dating, but yeah, we are. We are not experts by any means. We work with folks who are to better understand that. But I would say it's not in the conversation the vast majority of the time for solar projects. Those folks who think that the sheer ROI on a system for their rooftop, for their business, their school, what have you. The LEED certification and solar don't always go hand in hand in terms of if there's a solar conversation going on, they don't come to us with LEED questions immediately. I would say. Often we'll see LEED bring in solar, but not the other way around as much.
Yeah, I mean, renewable energy is obviously part of the points package, right? Does it matter if you're wind or solar?
It doesn't. It also doesn't matter if it's produced on site. You can always buy green certificates. You have to be able to show that you're using a certain percentage of what your requirements are. I think it's 5%. But I can't remember. I'm still going through that piece of it right now. I have a question. Okay, so as you know, very interested in renewable and solar. And I see a lot of changes happening for the better. I see some really interesting things that's starting to happen. I'm just wondering if you guys are getting involved in, you know, the new inverters that are battery ready, the new panels that are converting already, and also the size. You know, the capacity of the panels are starting to really climb 400 and plus, from about 250, 3 years ago. And then the efficiency is going up. I mean, where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tons of potential because I don't think any renewables right now are like in their perfect state. You know, it still takes fossil fuels to make wind turbines, to make solar panels, and then in 25 to 50 years, you have solar panels. What are you going to do with them? Now you have, aluminum frames, you have glass, you have the cells. Now there's a ton of companies actually looking into this, recycling solar panels, so that the material can be reused. But hopefully we get to a point where one solar panel that's 6 feet by 5 feet is as powerful as a whole building of panels. Which I think that technology exists. It's just going to take incremental steps to get there. But yeah, to answer your question, the technology in solar equipment is changing. There's trackers that actually, it's like racking equipment that follows the sun. So we're looking into trackers, battery backup. So, you can store power when the sun's not shining or at night. We haven't done a ton of battery backup because batteries have been very expensive, but the last couple of years, last 5 years, there's been more value in batteries, so the prices are coming down, supply and demand. And there's better batteries coming out that are a little bit more sustainably made because batteries can be quite toxic. So there's better methods going than batteries too. That answers your question.
I think we got time to maybe one more question. I don't know if you're running out, you gotta be somewhere else, or you can hang out. People are free to see the group, they want to talk one-on-one.
We're good.
We're hanging out, we're going out later. No, maybe we are. Any final? I have one final question for Kirby. It's sort of ad hoc on the panel. Taking us back to the beginning, you showcased all these, big projects that are in the area, which were somewhat overwhelmed to me by the number of lead professionals in the area. Is there work, and maybe some of you with lead certification can respond to this, are there work for all those professionals with relatively few projects existing, or are there a lot coming on board we don't know about? Why be lead certified? I guess it's a short version of the question.
Get a raise at work? No.
Someone will pay you more for that.
There's a lot of there's a lot of, I think of that 125, I bet 90% of that number is APs. So these folks are working for architectural engineering firms. A lot of the engineers that Rachel and Roger and probably most people in this room that work in the HVAC or building construction industry, when you're working with folks, a lot of their cards and a lot of their signatures on their emails are AP. So a lot of them just have it because it's important to have. And I don't know that that many of them are actually working on lead projects. I mean, in order to have a lead certified project, you have to have an AP on the team. So a lot of folks just don't really do that. I think I'm just kind of guessing. I know Marty Mecklenburg, I know who he is. You know who he is. He works he's immersed in that. He grades projects all the time. That's what he does really. So he's very busy at doing that. But I'm not certain that everybody that's an AP are involved in those projects. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I think so. You can like be, AP, but for us to be involved in LEED and to get those additional credentials, right? We touch so many buildings, and we're not so just narrow focused, right, on one segment of the building. So, well, we can maybe start some conversations that we necessarily from from the utility are not involved in, but started at the building level, where then those folks can carry that on. So I think that's the important piece, right? We touch so many buildings throughout all of us and what we're doing. I think it just gives us a broader perspective of sustainability as a whole facility, not just so narrow-minded. So, but you can speak to APM what you do.
I mean, I got my AP before I even started with the city. And I worked in the private sector as a manufacturer's representative. So, I mean, to me, I most likely will never work as an engineer who as an AP for an engineering firm who is guiding a customer through the AP, the LEED certification. I view it as two things. One, I can help carry the conversation forward, being perhaps the customer's representative, the city's representative, so to speak the same language as the engineering firm hired. Just the conversation we had today, we're talking about the flush out period. I'm familiar with that. The AP is familiar with that. Okay, now we're on the same wavelength. And number two, I have an AP, B, and C, building design and construction, basically new construction. That's great when we're building new things, but there's also O&M for operations and maintenance. So that will be my next certification that I get, followed by probably IFMA, certified facility manager. It's another set of best practices. It informs and drives decision making that I do in my everyday job. Will every building be O&M? Probably not. That's a hope. That's a goal. But the reality is probably not. But we can incorporate various aspects of that best practice to make it our best practice.
So some of the work is here directly with buildings, but that's not all of it. Some of it's working with partners from afar, or just being more knowledgeable in the job that you're in. That's a lot of like outside of making a project. So it's very interesting.
There's nothing bad with getting your AP. So
It's a personal satisfaction too for folks. I mean, it's something, it's a goal. And once you get that monkey off your back, but it's something that you always have.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and sharing some insight into what you do to help build a more sustainable future for us here in South Bend and across Michigan. Thank you all for doing this. Keeping things alive and keeping you running. Next week, great berries. So come on back. I know, be very soon.
Don't forget to sign up sheet if you're looking.